Vaishali, did you want to touch base on the brand identity bit, which also becomes a part of the brief for us when it came to the hospitality?
Yeah, sure. I could show very quick glimpses of Tirupati and Bodh Gaya.
So, Deepika, just to give you a gist of who Marasa Hospitality is and who Ronnie Madhwani is, he is the director of Marasa Hospitality. They are an East African company who run a lot of lodges and game parks in East Africa. And when they approached us first in 2008, they actually were coming down to India to put a trail of religious tourism sites, and they had taken lands in Tirupati, Bodh Gaya, and Rishikesh. And the first pilot project they wanted to start with us was a little hotel in Rajkot, which was a rundown existing hotel, which they wanted to convert that into a business hotel. So that was where our association started with. Again, interestingly, the way the project came to us for these, for all of these four projects that we did for Marasa, was that we did a concept design for them first to be able to try and establish this relationship, to try and see whether, you know, the design compatibility and the thoughts that we have through this is what they're looking at. Because when Marasa came down to India, they were clear that they wanted to collaborate with a local operator who would have the operational strengths but not the design shots that they take, because that's what Marasa wanted to keep with themselves, to try and make sure that the design calls are taken by them. And hence started this journey where, not elaborating on what the Rajkot Association was, the first project that went on floor was Tirupati. Both Tirupati and Bodh Gaya were conceptualized in 2009 together, inclusive of Rishikesh. All three projects were conceptualized in 2009. And since they wanted to stagger from a funding aspect and from the revenue model that they had, treaded into, Tirupati went on the floors first, roughly in 2011. And again, what the brief came to us was simply saying a 125 key hotel, a land which was 3.25 acres, and all the bylaws that comes with it, very stringent bylaws which we came under the Tirupati Urban Development Authority. And the bylaws also dictated a lot of things. So keeping the constraints of the bylaws aside, again, for us, any new site actually starts with that first site visit where we try and grasp culturally, historically, and climatically on what the place has to offer and what are the other inspirations that we draw from the place. So in case of Tirupati, the temple was completely something that blew us over. Not just the experience of taking a darshan in the temple, which is, I would say, gruesome, because I've done it thrice and it just feels you're totally in a space. Of course, there is that light bulb moment at the end where you're seeing that idol in the Garbhagriha for a few seconds, but the journey to reach till there is absolutely tiresome. We started with that association of what the typical Hindu temple planning does, and most of the South Indian Hindu temple plans do this, where you have a very, very rigid gateways on the, you have a gated plot, you have gateways that kind of spread out, you have uh, um, the front mandapa, the inner mandapa, and then the sanctum, which is basically the Garbhagriha. Very highly orthogonal, very highly introverted, because you have a pradakshina that you take around the two gaps that you see where the mandapas get formed, and you're taking a pradakshina around the Garbhagriha. And taking that into account, when we actually first visited the site in 2009, the site is in close to the foothills of the Saptagiri Hills, which is what Tirupati is formed by. And we are at the foothills of the entire range, and have a beautiful forested view to look at in the north. and the south is where we enter in from, which is the road. And at that time, this was clearly, we knew that this whole locality where this particular property was would develop into something highly dense and not something that you would want to look out into. That was something we had to anticipate for, 10 years down the line, what this property is going to become, or the locality is going to become. So introverted was something that we drew from the temple, which was very, very important to try and make sure that we try and draw our own views. And circumambulatory is something we drew from the temple. But of course, given the adjacencies in terms of staff movements and guest movements, it's not always possible to try and do a complete pradakshina. So it is a half pradakshina that happens in the temple planning. So coming back to what Marasa came with, they just asked for a 125 room or key hotel, somewhere between 3 to 4. The 3 to 4 was also not clear as what star rating would they want. And all that happened through the brief development. And by the time we reached a stage where we knew that we had 2 F&B outlets, a spa, a swimming pool, a gym, or whatever, they all came under the licensee requirements for a 5-star. And they could apply for it, though it was given to them at a cost of 3 to 4 star. So that flexibility that Marasa came with, where they were completely open to the idea, and this whole brand identity was then the next layer was, Vishnu and Lord Balaji, who is the primary deity at the Venkateshwara temple, is actually a manifestation of Lord Vishnu. And all the other contextual studies that we did in the region, which has a place called Alipri, which is where you actually take a walking path if you want to reach the foot on the top of the Tirumala temple. And it's completely inundated with Hindu temples, where you'll see iconography of Vishnu completely staring at you on every single temple facade. And that's where I think we drew from the idea of the Dashavatar, and how that story then got woven in the planning and then in the aspects of spaces and functions. So that was completely a brand and an identity that we created. There was no Marasa or Sarovar that was giving a brief for this. And that's how the entire design of the building actually got woven on 2 principles. One is the Hindu temple planning, and the second is the idea of Dashavatar, and how the 10 manifestations of Vishnu spatially, emotionally, kind of get connected through these various spaces. So without getting into details of what that was, this is where what we meant was our previous experience with a lot of retail and brand identities that we created for most of the retail brands who came to us either for a revamp that they needed in their brand, or they were creating an absolutely new brand. So I think the flexibility that one has with that kind of a brief, I think throws up a lot of opportunities for something beautiful to turn up. So yeah, so the other inspiration with the temple that you see this entire water body in the center is to reach to the Tirupati temple also, there is a little kund and a mandapa which you first enter, where the pilgrims go and kind of wash their feet, and that's called a pushkarni or a kund. And that was another idea that we had, that instead of the open courtyard, we really wanted to bring the idea of water, and bring the idea of that reflection into the space as well. Yeah, we can see, I think, quickly a few pictures of Tirupati and move to the idea of Bodh Gaya. Yeah, so that's where you see through and through the hills on the back. What we're seeing in the picture is the Lotus Cafe, which is actually inspired by the 5th avatar of Vishnu, which is Narsimha. So Narsimha is, neither day nor night, neither land nor water, neither beast nor man. It's at the threshold. And what we took from Narsimha was this whole aspect of being in the twilight zone, being at the threshold of actually treading from water to land, and then using the emblem of lotus, which is something that is across all the 10 avatars of Vishnu, something which is unfolding at every point and trying and opening up life. So we use the formative nature or the geometric aspect of the lotus, and that was what architecturally got turned into this 24/7 all day dining space.
Yeah, I remember reading or in an interview, like each space, it actually corresponds to one of the avatars, and the explanation and the reasoning behind that. I am recalling that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what it does.
that's really good. I was quite inspired after seeing it, after reading about it for the first time. Thank you.
And just a quick glimpse of, for the same client, a similar brief at the center of Buddhism, which is Bodh Gaya. The design and that we came up with was completely different at times, modifying the brief or shaping the brief to suit what we thought was a design that was appropriate for this location, which needed absolute simplicity, serenity, that Buddhism stands for. So just a very quick glimpse. This is the lobby, which is a totally non-air conditioned space, which is very different from how you would ordinarily approach a 4-star, 5-star hotel. And the courtyard beyond, with a glimpse of the Bodhi tree that becomes a centerpiece of this design. Um, just how the project is laid out, how exploring local materials, including the country tiles that you see on top and the arches, cobbling, all emerges from the rich Buddhist architecture of the place, um, which is considered to be the center of Buddhism on earth. Um, and in a way, a lot of the brief got shaped by some of our concepts of non-air conditioned corridors, lobbies, the idea of a design that was inside out and more resort like nature, in nature. And yeah, this is the final outcome
How
of
did
this design.
Maraz, how did Marasa respond to a non-air conditioned hotel? Like, given that air conditioning is a norm today, how did you convince them, or were they on board for the first time itself?
I think Vaishali is stuck. So
Yeah.
it's not non-air conditioned for the rooms are air conditioned, the public spaces are air conditioned. It's only the interstitial spaces which are connecting are not air conditioned.
Okay.
Just to give you this thing, yeah, there was a lot of resistance. If you saw in Tirupati, the picture which shows you the central water body with the Lotus Cafe, on the left, you see the whole connecting walkway. Now that
Hmm.
connecting walkway is a path that guests take from the reception where they enter and they check in to the hotel guest block, and that's roughly about 70 meters. So the walk is a 70-meter walk, and this was something that the clients and the operators were both pretty uncomfortable with in the start, because they did not realize what would this mean. But for us, we were very sure from day one, because the entire corridor is designed with a water body. So automatically what happens is, and the orientation of the corridor is north-south, with the winds blowing east-west. It's completely open
Hmm.
east-west. And you have water. So the direction of the wind is northeast, and it picks up the coolness from the water and actually changes the thermal envelope in that space. We have very deep chhajjas of almost 6 feet, which tries and keeps the rain at bay and the sun at bay. And the way the orientation was done was also, we studied through the climatic angles on how much will the sun really hit. And by the time we've done the overall 12-month study, you never have even harsh sun coming at any point. And actually, believe me, when you're walking through that, there's so much engagement by seeing the Thali restaurant, the water body, the Lotus Cafe, that your walk is completed. You don't even feel 70 meters is anything. The clients were completely convinced after the hotel was opened up. And the selfie moments for this hotel is by the water body. The moment the people enter in, if the one person in the family is trying to check in within the reception, the rest of them will already start taking selfies as they near the water body. So it's a different
Yeah.
experience. It's a huge amount of engagement. There's enough to see and experience that you don't realize the walk, and it's pretty well ventilated because it's an open space and well shaded. So it's pretty comfortable. And that was, I think, something that got very clear. So it was very easy for them in Bodh Gaya to accept that,
Okay.
because the struggles were
Yeah.
already discussed at
Mm.
Tirupati. And they knew that anything which is interstitial and in between as connecting spaces to main spaces can afford to be non-air conditioned.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you. So this is where the interview ended. In conclusion, I would like to say that the discussion threw important insights on the different processes which govern the practice of SJK architects. The insights which stood out for me are examples of how collaborations with external consultants at the stage of client brief development can transform a project. For instance, a private residence serving the entire village community due to a collaboration with an environmentalist, and that the role of gender in influencing design processes today, especially in the context of clients running similar businesses, may be negligible. However, that is still debatable. The detailed discussion here of projects such as the Corporate Office of Synergy Lifestyles, hotels at Tirupati and Bodh Gaya also present an understanding of the practices approach to design. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope it was useful to you in some way.